You know what, Jamie? Let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We gotta go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from irisportsdaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, September 26th, I believe. Yes, Tuesday, September 26th. And we have another mailbag. It's Tuesday, so we must be doing a mailbag show, and that's what we've got going on. Most of the questions are backwards thinking in terms of the game that just happened. And I'm happy to be on this show with you, Jamie. You were not on, you were at the game. You were not on the post game. And if I ever needed you on the post game, it was last weekend. Because, like, Mike was fine. It has nothing to do with Mike. It's like sometimes I really need you to help me process. And you weren't there. And so that was a very difficult show to do. We probably could have waited like 30 minutes, 15 minutes to kind of process, but we went live, and it was what it was. But I'm happy to have you on the show today, and we can kind of discuss things a little more. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and those who are watching on replay. If you like what you hear, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. And please hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. And links to the podcast are in the description below, as always. And look, Jamie, everyone was looking good at the game. Everyone was wearing green. I saw a couple of pictures of the green with the LEDs and everything, and it looked great. And if you want to look great not at a football game, then you can go to esqclothing.com and check out the world's first bamboo dress shirt from Ga Wang, Notre Dame alum, crafted from high-quality bamboo fabric. It's the softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. It's not only more sustainable than cotton, but it feels cooler, has stretch, is odor and wrinkle-resistant, and it's even machine washable. You've seen ESQ's one-piece collar bamboo dress shirt on all of Notre Dame's top players and coaches, and it's the perfect shirt for today's business meeting or heading for a night out. Use ISD 15 and get 15% off all online items. Use ISD 15 for 15% off all online items. All right, Jamie, let's get to a super chat first of all with CFB Hertz. Thank you for the super chat. How does Notre Dame bounce back against Duke? That's the $1 million question. Unfortunately, I don't have that much, so I have to settle for $5. So we thank you for that, CFB Hertz. We really appreciate it. Jamie, we got a ton of super chats on Saturday. We got a bunch. It was maybe, I don't know if people were just like, I don't know why.
I know why.
Go, let's hear it. I want to hear why.
It's because when people are like upset, it's like, you know what? Thanks. They're like, thanks for doing this because I'm upset and I want to vent. So here's some money. And when people are also feeling great, if Notre Dame would have won that, win or lose, there would have been a lot of super chats because people have been like, let's go, Notre Dame beating Ohio State, what a win, blah, blah, blah. And then just like, here's $20. Like, that's how people are. That's just how it is. It's it's like after, so, many years ago, my wife and I were in Pittsburgh at a Steelers game. We were drunk at Patrick. That's probably true too. My wife and I were at a Steelers Ravens playoff game. Steelers came back, won the game. It was a huge game. And then afterwards, we're like, well, guess what? Like, there was a casino. There's a casino right by formerly Heinz Field. And we're like, let's go to the casino. And we went to the casino, won $300. And we're just like, but we were just like, let it ride. We just kept doing it because we just like felt great at the time. And I think that's the mentality. And then also, if we would have been like, oh God, I can't believe the Steelers lost that again. Let's go to the casino. Maybe we can make it feel better. That's just the kind of thing what people do. That's just what it is.
Yeah. It was quite a night. I mean, to kind of address it, like, I'm not a big like success rate guy as far as like Notre Dame clearly outplayed them and all that stuff. Because there's like other things, like they lost a lot of the big downs, like a lot of the third downs, obviously late. But I think it does portend very well to games like Duke and games like Louisville and on and on and on, right? When you can have the success rate advantage, the way that Notre Dame did against a team like Ohio State, that's a fairly big deal in terms of the quality of the Notre Dame team, without getting into like whether they blew it or any of that stuff. It's just they played a good football game, and in terms of on a down to down basis. So I think that shows well for the Duke game, and I think they'll bounce back just fine. That's kind of where I'm coming from on that. So
I think that it's one of those things too where I think losing a game like that, it's much harder to get blown out and then try to come back from that.
Yeah.
Like just being totally deflated. So I think most people remember that 2019 Michigan game and the way that was just like an absolutely deflating game for Notre Dame, because that was the kind of game, if they win that game, it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, they're in the CFP conversation, all this kind of stuff, because they only lost, like it was a tight game on the road to Georgia. So there was all these kind of things going on. That was like, okay, your hopes and dreams are over. And not just your hopes and dreams are over, but they got crushed, right? They got crushed because you just, on a miserable day in that setting. And it was just a horrible, horrible day. And then, they, didn't sleepwalk through that Virginia Tech game, but it was like things weren't going their way. They had the fumble at the goal line that went all the way back. And, they had to win right at the end, right? Ian Book scored the touchdown. It's like those games are a lot harder to come back from than, losing a tight game where you're like, man, like we were there. So I think as long as they come into this game and they're not like too beat up, because that's the thing. We'll get into some of the stuff with Thomas and Colsey later or whatever, right? But like, and Colsey, I had heard, was hurt before that, so he didn't even play in the game.
I also heard that.
Yeah. So, but there's also kind of things too where we might not hear about stuff where guys were more banged up later on, and that happens after a game like that. It was a very physical game. So that's the hardest part to get over. I think the team will be fine. There's a lot of veterans on the team. Obviously, if you look at like specifically the defense, like guys like JD Bertrand and Maris Leofeld and Jack Kaiser and Howard Cross and Riley Mills, and these guys played a lot of football, right? DJ Brown. I know it's DJ Brown, it might be harder to get over, but for everybody else too, like it's just one of those things where you have a chance to kind of move on to the next game. They've lost games before, especially last year. You've had to. How are they ever going to get over this 3-3? They got over it and they ended up doing pretty well. So I think they'll be fine in this game. And they still got to play well because Duke has played really well, but I don't think you're going to see a letdown of like an effort or like a confidence thing were left down in this game.
Yeah. And I think it helps. It's on the road too. It's good to get away. It's good to be in that environment, right? It kind of centers you and focuses you.
Hearing the groans if you're not doing good
right,
at home.
Right, exactly. Like a couple 3-and-outs or something. Yeah, so totally. I want to welcome Jip Anderson to the live stream. Hi all. I've been listening to the podcast for a while, but this is the first time catching the live stream. Had to log on and join the group therapy session. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining the live stream, and thank you for supporting the show through listening on replay and things of that nature. So, all right, Jamie, let's get into the questions, because there's a lot of questions in the chat that are going to be coming up through the questions from the ISD customers. So let's get to those right now. The first one is Barney M. He's referring to the 3rd and 19 play. He wants to know what Thomas Harper is doing. I recommend everyone go to our YouTube channel. You're already on our YouTube channel, but go to that. And I did a whole breakdown. It's about 5 minutes. I didn't want to post it on Twitter because I knew it would take a little bit longer to explain. And Twitter has like a time limit on videos, the length of videos. So go to our YouTube page and check it out. There's a 3rd and 19 play there. Thomas Harper, I got a lot of questions about this, Jamie. Thomas Harper on that play is a flat player. So, and he's going to get underneath number 1. He's doing exactly what he was supposed to do on that. So that's what he's doing at the snap, especially when he's to the field. So I do want to. We've been talking a lot about the 3rd and 19 play. They chose to double Marvin Harrison, which takes Xavier Watts out of the play basically entirely. And we said, if you're gonna use someone to double Marvin Harrison, then use not your best safety. Whether you want it to be DJ Brown or whether you want it to be Ramon Henderson, doesn't matter to me. Your best safety should have the most responsibility. The most responsibility on that play ended up being Ramon Henderson, where he has to be over the top of Stover over the middle and Egbuka in the slot. You're asking a lot. Now, he was in position. I think he read it right. For some reason, Jamie, he opened as if he was going to turn and run when that ball's never going over your head.
Yeah.
Like, that's never going there. I think that was just a mental error in the moment. But what did you see on that 3rd and 19?
First of all, everyone should check out that breakdown. Greg did a really great job with that. And I think that was a great point about his technique there and how that kind of thing made the split difference. Also, people don't even give credit to Kyle McCord there because it really was the perfect throw.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, if he throws that a little bit inside, it's broken up.
Yeah.
And it was just the right throw at the right spot. And obviously the guy's got a gun. That's the one thing he does have is he's got an absolute gun. So that was part of it. I also just realized too how many people like don't really understand a lot about X's and O's and defensive strategy whenever I do like film stuff or whatever, because people don't really get, they think it's just like, why isn't he running with this guy? Because they think it's just like all man, but it's like, no, that's not how defense works. Or they think like on the Trevion Henderson touchdown, like I had all these people like, Maris is supposed to set the edge there. And I'm like, that's not that's not how defense works in that scenario, right? Like people don't understand why you attack the trap and you want it to spill and all this. Like there's a lot of people who don't get that, and which is fine, right? That's why we're trying to explain certain things and all that. I think that 3rd and 19 play, I mean, obviously it's all hindsight, right? But I think if you were going to just say, hey, we want to double Harrison here, then what I'm doing is I'm running cover two, like man 2, right? With 2 high. And then I'm saying, basically I'm telling the high guys, I'm like, essentially you got Harrison over the top. One guy's got Harrison over the top. The other guy's got Egbuka over the top. And if Fleming beats us or Stover beats us, we can live with that. I mean, you obviously don't want to live with that, but it's like, don't let the 2 elite guys beat you. Yeah. And I think that's how I would approach it. And then rush 4, right? So then you have a better chance at getting a rush or whatever, right? Rather than 3. And I think that's how I would have approached it in that just specific situation. But I mean, like it's hindsight 2020, right? And that's just one of those things that you could just, I mean, I don't know. It's just like one of those things. It's like you can. There's a million plays in the game where you can look back and just say this specific thing. If they did this differently, that would have changed the game. And it was a game of inches, decimal points, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, it's interesting to me, like the way that they call it, right? Like, so like Thomas Harper is running under number 1, right? Like he's going to be like a curl defender, essentially. The thing about that is Ohio State's not running a curl. And if they do run a curl, like you want that. You want them to run a curl because if you tackle them, the game will probably end.
Yeah.
They have to run up and try to, they have to run up and try to snap the ball. They're not going to be able to spike it because it'd be 4th down at that point. It just, you want them to be in front of you like that. And in my opinion, they're like coming up with a plan. And I think that this just,
they didn't expect 4 verts.
They sent 5 verts, first of all. So they didn't expect that. But I think you need to have a plan for, they're making up a plan now, Jamie, to, if they're ever in the situation at the one with no timeouts and you have 10 players on the field, they're going to like signal into a corner to take a penalty and stuff. Like, to me, it's you should have a plan for a play like the 3rd and 19. And not just that, but that was right after the long discussion about whether it was grounding or not. They had time to get organized and think about, okay, this is the situation. Let's get a good call in. You need to have a defense that is unsound against anything underneath, but protects basically the first down marker. Anything underneath is good. You can rally to that and you can tackle them inbounds. Like, it's all good, right? Anything like you're sitting outside, like if like we talked about it before, like 5 across with 2 sitting there. If you want 2 there to jam Egbuka or Stover, whoever, and then you rally to everyone else, like that is so much preferable to me than doubling Harrison and sending players to the flat, which they're never throwing the ball, and putting Ramon Henderson in a bind. Like, he is in a situation that he would be in as if Notre Dame was blitzing and sending pressure. He was in a position where he's essentially has to cover 2 guys. And so you sent 3, you're never getting pressure with that. And then you didn't have the amount of coverage in the back that you would want because you doubled somebody else.
Yeah. And you mentioned it on the video, and I mentioned in my rewatch notes too. If they would have just thrown it to Stover, it's a touchdown.
I think so too.
Yeah, because Henderson is not getting there. It was just they just put him in a, yes, it's like he should have taken a better angle, but you put him in an impossible position because he's being like conflicted by 2 vertical routes there. So that's why too, like, unless you're going to do, like I said, you could have run 2 man or whatever, or you just have 3 safeties sitting at the goal line and you say, like, this is what we're going to have 3 there. And if you're going to do drop 8 and you have 3 there and you want to have 5 guys underneath, fine. So you don't want, like, some kind of run and catch situation, fine, whatever. Right. But like, that was what my original thought was. That's what they should have done, because that's over. That would have been a touchdown, because I mean, like you said, Bertrand widened him out, and that was a good job. Like, he did what he was supposed to do on that, but it still would have been an impossible play for Henderson to get to.
Yeah.
Like, so it just wasn't a good call within it. And they didn't plan for that specific thing. They obviously thought they were getting something different. And I mean, it's almost like, because McCord, pre-snap, he had decided, I'm throwing to Egbuka. Like, that was, he looked there the entire way, which is also why I didn't just think, and I mean, Henderson isn't exactly this guy, but if Henderson just watched McCord, he could have just literally just went and got
he could have got that. He could have just jumped in front and picked it off.
Yeah.
And so I just, like, I feel like they put him, and this is kind of indicative of the whole final couple minutes, where it's just, they had been so organized all year.
Yeah.
And then in this moment, they were unsure. The calls weren't as good. I mean, they had the other one where they busted on a 0. They sent a corner blitz, which, why are you taking your best player out of coverage in that moment on 3rd down? We're blitzing the corner. I don't understand that. You're going 0.
Well, what was with that too? I mean, I wanted to talk to you about that, but you know what? Let's just move on to the other stuff, because we could go on to this, whatever. But we could talk about that off the air with that play, because that is a play that, I mean, I think we could talk about for 20 minutes, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, really, to be honest, if you think about the game, they had 2 busts. In coverage. Unfortunately, I mean, luckily one was to Xavier Johnson. So it was 40 instead of 80 to the house or whatever, right? But like, unfortunately, the other one was in that situation. So
yeah. All right, let's go to the next question. Heyo127. I know it's probably not the top of anyone's list after the game, but are you guys concerned about Biagi's special teams? What do you think about this, Jamie?
I wouldn't say I'm concerned, but I think people, like, for Schrader example, the Schrader example, that's obviously like, that's a kick you got to make. You got to make. And you can't just be a big leg. And I think one of the things is like, one of the things you can do is Schrader looked great in camp. He looked great in camp. Like, I think he maybe had, out of all the days that we were there, he had maybe like one okay day. And then every other day he looked great. Right. So, and then obviously everyone's seen his leg. The guy's got a monster leg. Right. But I mean, how much is that on Biagi? I think it's like, this guy literally, before the season, he played on a team for 4 years that won 9 games. 9 games total in 4 years. He's never been in this situation. He's never had to play this. So it's like, obviously he has talent, but it's a different ball game. And that's like, hashtag college kickers. That's the thing with a lot of these guys, right? So, I mean, how much is that on Biagi? I mean, Brian Mason was the guy who identified him. So it's not him. Like, I mean, and part of it is mental, I guess, and that's something you got to work on. But like, I think one of the things is they haven't had, obviously, the blocks that they had with Mason, right? And it didn't. I think it wasn't until like the 5th or 6th game that they got their first block, and then they had a bunch in a row. And I will say they've come close to a couple.
Yeah.
But and I don't even know, like, even if you think about how Mason approached it, it wasn't like they did like exotic stuff to block kicks. They were just super aggressive, and that was the mentality. And then guys just went out and did it, right? So I think they've stayed aggressive. They just haven't blocked it. I don't think there's anything that I've noticed that has been like really bad with anything that Biagi's done in terms of like what everything else, like structurally. I think that Schrader, the one kind of squib one, I think that was more of a mishit than I don't think that was a plan.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I'm not concerned about it, but it's pretty obvious they haven't had the same impact on special teams, because special teams helped them win games last year.
Yeah.
Because this year the offense and defense are so much better than they were last year, and they're not getting the same type of impact from special teams.
The only thing that I would say, and we get a question about this later in the questions, and we could just answer it now. They're doing this thing now where they're changing holders.
Yeah, what was with that?
Like, that to me is super red flaggy. Hey Bob, let's monitor the special teams, Jamie. I think that's
monitoring, and I think is
I think we can monitor the special teams going forward. Because look, now is the time where, against Duke or against Louisville, where it's like you want to impact the game in a positive way on special teams. I don't know about, like, kickoff coverage is 123rd nationally. I mean, he's usually kicking out of the end zone. So I don't know. I don't know what like metric that even is. I don't see kickoff
coverage. It's based on the returns. But basically what happened is they gave up
that one return.
One big return. And it's like one of those things where like the average. So that's why it's like, you can't really take those numbers.
Yeah.
And
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think the punt stuff has been great. Like, I mean, McPherson's been great.
Yes.
He's been very good. Like, he hasn't punted enough to be listed on the thing, but he's booming the crap out of the ball. And like, I think the net has been pretty good. They haven't had anything given up there. I don't know. I just think it's like one of those things where it's early, that it's just like one big, really like kind of like the one big return. And it's like, it's not like a hole in the coverage. It's like a guy missed a tackle. It's like, got to make a tackle. Like, and that's kind of where it's at. So I'm not really worried about the coverage teams or anything like that.
I think it's worth monitoring. I think that's where we can leave it.
I mean, if they give up if they give up another one, then I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's something. But I mean, at that point, I think they had only had to cover one kick before that actual return, right? So
yeah,
they've only covered 7 kicks on the year. So
in my opinion, the changing the holder thing is a scapegoating, and it shows a lack of confidence. So I'm definitely monitoring that for sure.
Didn't it sound like it was like that Schrader wanted it or something?
Yes.
Though?
Oh yeah.
So Schrader
he was more comfortable with a backup holder, which is just like, excuse me, like you had all fall, like you said, you had this whole time to decide who you liked, and now it's like a problem. Like I just don't know. I mean, hopefully it works, but it just, to me, sounds a little bit like sounds a little scapegoaty to me. But we'll monitor. Silverback says, or asks, would it be wise for Coach Marcus Freeman to use the next 2 games as opportunities to get players on the field who have an explosive element to their game, who can see us help and see who can help us beat USC?
I don't know. I thought about this, and it's like, I think people think that they're like holding back, like they're holding back a bunch of like 4-2 guys in the roster. That's not the case. The only guy who really could be that guy that's like, hey, I'd like to see Braylon James get an opportunity or whatever. Well, guess what? He's got to be activated now because they don't have enough receivers, right? So, I mean, and we don't really know where he is at in terms of, with, knowledge of the offense and what kind of role he can have. But I mean, he's going to get an opportunity now to at least be on the field for something. And I think too, like one of the things with this specific game, certainly they were plenty explosive early in the season. They didn't throw deep that much. Obviously they did against Central Michigan, but part of it is how teams were playing them. This specific game, and I wrote about it after, is that they didn't have the time to throw. The protection wasn't good enough, right? Like he didn't have the time to do a lot of stuff. And someone mentioned the other stuff with play action, so I'll save that for later. But yeah.
So I think Jeremiah Love stock has to be.
He's got to get more touches
through the ceiling. I mean, he looked amazing. Just straight up, he looked amazing in this game. But honestly, if you didn't know like anything about Notre Dame prior to this, even last year, you'd be like, why isn't number 12?
Who is this guy? Why isn't he getting? Yeah.
Like you would think that he was their best player, 100%. Like that he was that good. Which is like, not to get into like why they didn't use Estime more, because I think they should have, especially late. We don't have to belabor that. But so him, the thing with Braylon James is like, it would be nice. It would be great. They need his skill set, in my opinion. And maybe we'll get into this later. I think that if he was ready to go, they would absolutely use him for reasons, because I don't think they like the other guys, frankly. And we'll get into that later. But I think they would. Defensively, I don't know who else they could use, honestly. They use everybody. They play so many guys.
I just get a chuckle. I see this guy created his YouTube thing just to do hire Elko. Like, come on, man.
He's
like,
good. Look, he's a good coach.
Hire Elko. Play Love. Get ready for next season.
They're playing him. They're playing him.
This season is toast. Like, come on. Okay.
Well, he watched Bud Elliott's video, so he knows it's over with.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. I think Jeremiah Love, and if you can activate Braylon James, that would be great. I'm not going to call for it because I don't know. Maybe Braylon James will end up at Central Florida without any snaps and then in junior college or something. Like, I don't know. Yeah. They need this skill set though. That's for sure. AZ Doc says, did Ohio State scheme Tyree out of the game, or did Tyree have a bad game? recognizing it may not be binary, but it felt like he was trending and was hopeful for something out of him. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, I mean, he had the early, they ran the mesh. They had one of their only kind of blown coverages in the game, right, where they didn't pass him off, and he had his big play there. And I mean, I think he's averaging like 26 or 27 yards a catch. Like, he's obviously been extremely productive with it, and he played in other parts of the game. But I also think if you're going to run, like, I think a lot of it comes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about how, like, there were so many times too that they just, like on third and medium, that they were like, we just got to get rid of the ball. Like, we got to get the ball out. So they were running like those little stick routes, and those are better plays for Flores and Greathouse and those types, or Mitchell Evans or whatever, than throwing it to Tyree, right? So I think it's personnel wise up front dictated some of that stuff. Could they have like schemed stuff up to, I think this would have been a game to, if you're going to do the 2-back thing, which they did a lot, and now they're going to have to do a lot more 2-back based on just the receiver stuff that they have, could have been a good time to get, break out Tyree in the backfield and just say, run a vertical route out of the backfield, right? Something like that. So they could have, I think, done something like that. In hindsight, you could say they could have done, but I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff in usage in the game was at least partially dictated by what was going on up front and how they did stuff.
Yeah. I want to talk about that mesh concept really quick, because it was a really good concept, because they sent, I think it was Devin Ford, into the flat and then up the seam. And the flat defender, the rule is, as any flat defender will tell you, if someone comes to the flat and then leaves, you got to chase. So he is going to vacate the flat unless he's passing it off to someone. But I think that corner was run off by somebody else.
Yeah, he was.
So I think it was if someone enters the flat and then goes upfield, you have to chase them, and you are naturally going to leave that flat. And so Tyree's coming across, and so he's naturally going to be wide open. So that was a very good scheme by Parker on that, to just get an opening there. As far as the rest of it, I don't know if you've watched this specifically, Jamie. I don't think that Tyree and Merriweather, I don't know how often they're running live routes. And what I mean by that is they're actually part of the progression. I don't know how often they're doing that.
I don't think. Yeah, you're right. I
don't think they're doing that. I think they're out there running routes that aren't real, and they're not going to throw it to them. And
or they're like the fourth progression.
Yeah. And I can only just, because look, Tyree has 10 targets all year. Merriweather has 10 targets all year. Okay, they've played 5 games. You're throwing it to them twice a game.
Yeah.
They're throwing. They find ways to throw the ball to Greathouse. They find ways to throw the ball to Flores. They don't find ways to throw to them. I can only come to the conclusion that they don't think they're that good. That's all I can say. And here's the other.
I think the freshman guys are better. I think that's 100% clear.
But here's the thing though. They are 16 of 20 throwing the ball to Merriweather and Tyree for like 380 yards.
Yes, the efficiency is insane. Yeah.
It's so they don't have reason to, in my opinion, they don't have reason to think like, oh, these guys can't get it done. The late in the game on the I think it was their second touchdown drive. They hit the seam. They ran 4 verts with Evans in the slot and Tyree and Merriweather on the opposite side, and they ran cover 2, which is just the best coverage for 4 verts.
That's yeah.
And he throws it to Evans, right? And it's a good play. On the bottom, if he throws it to Tyree, if it's not a touchdown, it's a 50-yard game because the safety opened to Tobias. And so he's running down the middle of the field. The linebacker does not get depth middle. He will run for as long as, I don't know how they'll recover or whatever. It's going to be a huge play. And Hartman's not looking, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's his fault. I don't think that I think he's told your first read is the tight end. If you can hit him, you hit him.
Yeah. And I also think it comes back to just what I said before. Like, and I think Hartman did a really good job of kind of managing like rush. Like, it was a very veteran job of being like, I mean, pocket closing in. I'm not taking a sack.
Right.
We're keeping it on. We're keeping it moving here. Hit the stick. 6 yards. Right.
Yeah.
Like I think that was always the thing. And frankly, if you watch it, like, and I mentioned too, about Joe Alt, like, this was not like a Joe Alt is going to be a top 10 pick game. This was his JTT, he's going to be a top 10 pick game because, he had that kind of impact in the game, and he got the better of Alt when they went against each other. Like, he really had Alt on skates a lot. I mean, Fisher played better than Alt in this game.
Yeah.
Overall, even the run game too, right? Like, so this was a game where if your guy who's an All-American was having problems doing that, and I think that had a lot to do with some of, like, I'm not even thinking about that vertical route because I'm just thinking about like not getting smoked here,
right,
and not taking a sack or not throwing a pick or whatever, right? Like, I think if that, and a lot of people are like, well, he did this at Wake Forest all the time. It's like, well, because they told him to do that and they didn't care if he threw a pick. But in this game, they did care if he threw,
yeah.
So it's different, right? And I think the one thing I would say specifically too with like Tobias, like, he obviously drew the penalty on the double move against Davis Igbinason, right? And would have loved if they would have went with Merriweather against him more, because first of all, the guy just committed a penalty like every time, and that's the scouting report said this guy grabs. He's a press corner who grabs. He commits a penalty on every play. He's a penalty machine. And unfortunately, they only called it once, right? But like, that's why you go after him, right? And so that, I think they would have been nice, but obviously they threw 3 vertical routes at him, and one was to Thomas, and one was to Flores. But I mean, it was a penalty. I mean, it wasn't like Flores beat him. Thomas was interfered with, right? Like, and the ball was underthrown to Flores, right? But yeah.
I mean, the ball's overthrown. Like, those are poor throws.
Yeah, they weren't great throws.
They need to be catchable. They had Tobias a couple times, and it's like, I'm not going to do a breakdown of it because he's not in the progression, clearly, right? But they had him a couple times. But they're like, he's not looking. He's throwing it somewhere else. And so, to me, it's like, it'll be very interesting now, and this comes up later too. It'll be very interesting. I think they're going to put Tobias on the boundary, and they only threw it to him to this game because Thomas got hurt and he had to be on the boundary. And that's when they started throwing it to him. And so that's going to be interesting to me. Like, when they're forced to throw it to him. Yeah. When they're forced to throw it to him, like, how can he play? Because they haven't shown any faith in him, honestly, none. And to be honest, there's nothing on the field to say like that is correct. They're 7 of 10 throwing to him. He had the one drop against Navy, and ever since then, like, whatever they throw to him, he's fine.
In the game stuff, yeah. But like, I mean, I think you could say, like, in camp, he didn't have the kind of camp where you were like, this guy's going to have it dominant. Like, they need to get the ball.
For sure.
Merriweather. So, but now this is what happens, right? Is opportunities arise because of this. And now it's like perfect time to like, okay, you've made the most of your opportunities now. Now you're going to get more opportunities. Like, hopefully he shines. And it becomes a breakout for him.
And here's the thing I want to point out about camp too, Jamie, is everyone said, He didn't do a good job in camp. Couldn't get open. Going against Ben Morrison every day. Going against Cam Hart every day. When did Ohio State's receivers get over on those two guys? Ben Morrison's going against the best player in the country at the position. And he struggled. Marvin Harrison Jr. struggled against Ben Morrison. The one catch he made, which I think should have been a catch. It should have been a catch.
I think it should have been a catch.
It's an unbelievable play. It's an like that's the standard. You have to make a play like that to get over on Ben Morrison. And so, like, to me, it's like Tobias, it does not shock me at all that he struggled against him in camp. And so I just think whatever it is, and look, the coaches they're playing it out. So it's not like you said he had a poor camp and it's like, well, I'm disagreeing with you or anything. Like, the coaches obviously agree because they're not throwing the ball. So,
but that is the thing too. But I think it also shows that, like, I think a lot of the game was called too because they don't have confidence in their receivers. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't. That's just.
And that, like, to me, that's extremely, extremely disappointing. From going into this game, how many times did we talk about this, Jamie? You have to be an explosive team against big time teams. You have to. And you had the 4-game lead up to work on this and to build on it and to let them fail in games. To let them fail. You have Central Michigan. You have Tennessee State. You have Navy. Let them, give them many opportunities so that they're ready to go against Ohio State. And they never did it. They have not done it. And they are not going to do it. Like, I have no faith in it. Like, we'll get to this question later. Like, I think with the injuries, we are going to see so many 12 sets at this point.
It's going to be 12 personnel offense. Yeah,
exactly. So that's what I think is coming. And we'll get to that later, though. Let's get to the next question. Extra ND 1994. Given OSU was the best defense we faced all year, what's your expectation for the offense the rest of the way? So there you go.
I mean, they're definitely the best defense that Notre Dame will face all year. I have no doubt about that. So, but in saying that, the way which is also kind of a little bit why the 40 points in the 4 straight games to start the season. I mean, I'm not saying 40 points against NC State is not a big deal, because it is, because, they're definitely like an above average defense, but Notre Dame only plays one bad defense the rest of the way, where they've kind of had this thing set up where like, even with Drew Pine, we're like, Drew Pine's going off this game against a horrible defense, right? So it's like, Stanford's the only horrible defense they play the rest of the way. Everybody else is like pretty good at the very least, like Duke has a good defense. Louisville has an above average defense. USC is better than they were last year. I mean, I'm not saying they're good, but they have players and they're better than they were last year. So they're not atrocious. They're just below average is how I put it. Pitt is an above average defense. Clemson has a very good defense. Wake they got some players, but they're, average to below average or whatever. So they're not playing anyone who's horrible. Just Stanford is the only defense that really they should just totally destroy, right? Yeah. So from that perspective, there's going to be some games there that it's like, man, I mean, why isn't it easy to get to like 40 in this game? Well, they're playing against better teams now, right? So it's like better defenses now. So I think you should expect them to be better in some of these games too, but we still have to kind of see it against more of these defenses. I think this is a perfect example because Duke has a good defense. They have I'd say they probably got similar to NC State, where they have probably 4 or 5 guys who are NFL guys on their defense, but everybody else is a good college player, a good player, and they play fundamentally sound and they play fast. And Mike Elko is a great coach, and Tyler Santucci is mini Mike Elko in terms of being a protege and all this. So they're a good defense. So this is a test. It's a test this week. It's if Notre Dame has really good offense, they're putting up points this week against a good defense. But it's just like, you got to kind of see of where they're at. And it doesn't help that they have all the injuries, right? So,
yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, if they're a good offense, it's a great offense, then they should handle everyone left. Now, you know, and it's not to say like it will be like they'll score on every possession or anything like that. Like, I don't think that's true, but you should be able to handle these teams if you're going to be a great team. If you are what you think, you know. I have questions. I mean, look, and I think the point about like, you know, because you mentioned on Power Hour yesterday, like about the protection, and I look back and like, it's not that those guys were coming free, but they were especially in the middle of the field, like they were getting pushed back into him.
Oh yeah,
couldn't step up into the pocket. Like, it was kind of a big problem. And so it was just
their defensive tackles dominated that game.
Yeah,
they dominated that game. Tyreek Williams
from a pass rush standpoint,
and just even from like against the run. I mean, Hall guesses too much against the run, or else he'd be a better player. But Tyreek Williams was like borderline unblockable the whole game. I don't care who was going against. He went against Pat Coogan, goes against Spindler, goes against Corral. I mean, he ragdolled Joe Alt. When have you ever seen anyone ragdoll Joe Alt? Like, never seen it. Never, even when he was a freshman, right? So, he's a stud. He's a big time player.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Irish DDS. This is a big opportunity for the Marcus Freeman era to move forward. Last year, OSU beat Notre Dame twice. What gives you confidence that Notre Dame will be able to refocus and bounce back?
Well, I think they're not playing another team that's lower. Also, the fact that it happened last year, that also gives me the thing, because I don't think they're going to go into it taking it lightly. Obviously, Freeman and the staff take a much different approach than they did last year. I think those guys learned a lot too. And I think that, you know, even just in case they didn't think Duke was good, the fact that this got moved to a night game, College Game Day is going there. That says they're a good team. The fact that every one of these next 3 games, they're playing 4 straight night games. It's like, yeah, these are all big games. These are all good teams. So that gives me confidence that they are like not going to take it any more seriously. And I think too, like, Parker Fleming, you know, Stats War on Twitter, has his, EPA, just raw EPA of how teams have played. And Notre Dame is first in the country in raw EPA margin, which basically they've played the best. They've performed the best out of everyone. So it's not like they fluked their way into those in the games. They've played at a high level in each game, really, right? And just because they lost this game didn't mean they didn't play at a high level for most of it. So that's what gives me confidence that they can, you know, win.
Yeah, I mean, just straight up, like, this is a better team. Like, they weren't good last year. That's why to me, it was less that they had a letdown and just they weren't very good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look, you see Tyler Buckner like struggle against USF at Alabama. Yeah. You know, like, that was the problem. It wasn't so much that they let down or whatever. It's just they weren't good. And he had a terrible game. Right? I don't think Sam Hartman's going to have a terrible game. I don't think he played particularly well in this one. He's like 17 to 25 for 175 and a touchdown. You know, it's just like he'll be fine. And I think the defense is good. I think the defense is very good. So they'll be okay in terms of just the way that they play. If they make mistakes, then obviously things happen. But Meek Irish, if you had to pick one player on offense and one on defense to get 50% more snaps per game, who would it be? It doesn't have to be 50%. Just the spirit of the question.
Yes, I know, because I thought about this and I'm like, that's just way too much math specifically to think. I'm like, so this guy's getting 20 snaps a game. He should get I'm like, no, I'm just going to pick guys that.
Yeah, Josh Burnham got 5. I'd like him to get 10. Josh Burnham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I will say on defense, I picked two, and it's Burnham and Sneed. It's Burnham and Sneed. So Burnham, I think they should rotate him in more. I just think Botello, you just haven't seen enough from him specifically as an edge rusher that you have to give Burnham, who's clearly the next guy at Viper, you have to give him more of a chance to see if he can maybe like pass Botello. That's what. So I want to see that there. And then Sneed, not in the base defense, as we've discussed many times before, but he needs to become more of a regular in the sub package. He's just a guy who makes an impact when he's in there. In this game too, he had 3 pressures on 7 rushes. That's good. Like, you'll take that. Clearly he is just raw, whatever, as can be in all ways. But when you just put him in attack mode, which he would be in the sub packages, or you just said, hey, sub package, whatever, just cover the back here and just do that, he can do that. So he needs to be more in that, because in this very short amount of times he played in this game, he made an impact. When Burnham gets in the game, he makes plays. He does well. So, Botello was pretty good on that, actually, the last drive, but he just, whatever reason, he does not rushing the same that he did last year. He lacks confidence as a rusher now, where he was used to be way more creative with what he was doing. Watch when he was doing hop step stuff against South Carolina. Just was I was didn't know he could do that. That he did it and he won, right? And he's not doing that anymore. He's just getting stuck in the chest of his guy and just bull rushing, and that's it. And that is just not good enough, right? They need more from him. And obviously you see JJB is an ascending player. And obviously he has earned more stuff, so that's fine and that's great. But that Viper position, they need more from it. They need more from it. And I think the interior guys have played well. On offense, I would say, I think you'd say Tyree and Tobias, we've kind of talked about now. We probably don't need to go into.
Well, not Tobias. He's out there all the time.
No, but just in terms of not getting the more snaps, but the more
production.
Yeah.
More opportunities for sure.
But I would say too, Tyree, this is another thing, because there's all these injuries now. Well, he's got to play more now because they don't have any guys. So it's he's got to get more. But you could easily say Rico Flores too, because Rico Flores, he played probably the most in this game, which, man, that says a lot about Rico Flores. It's you played the most snaps basically against Ohio State. Man, I like Rico Flores as a player. I think
he's going to start. He's going to start to the field. I think you're going to have Tobias on the boundary, Flores to the field, which is another thing. Now your 2 field players are freshmen, true freshmen. So that's that. So he'll start to the field. I think Greathouse is, he's, I don't know. He's their starting slot. Maybe they could put him in the boundary, maybe, but in the game they put Tobias there. So that's why I think they'll keep doing that. I agree with you on Burnham. Absolutely. I would say at this point, if it's not Burnham, I would say Christian Gray. I'd like to see more of him. We haven't seen him be bad yet. And I think there's something there. He's a really good player. Rajon said bad math on the 50%. Actually, that is true. 50% more snaps of 5 is actually 7.5. 10 is 100% more.
That is true.
Yeah, I did that wrong.
Thanks for correcting us, man. That's why
I don't know if that's what he meant, but I was when I said it, I was actually, that's not even right.
That it does. I appreciate it.
So yeah, that's that. All right, CHSFB 75. Why wouldn't Notre Dame have gone with the holder? The kicker was most comfortable with the start of the season. It's a great question, and that's why I think it's a scapegoating situation. That's my take on it. Do you have a take other than that?
No, I think it's like something like that. That it's probably like, this is why it's not working, and you're looking for some other answers and saying, so maybe I wouldn't go as far as saying it's scapegoating, but it's like you're looking for a reason why it's not working for you.
Yeah.
And that's what he's just like, let's try this. And I mean, obviously it didn't matter in this game. So
do you think Jack Kaiser needs more snaps? James Lorenzenzi brings him up.
No. I think Jack Kaiser is a good player when he gets in. But I think he is not as good as JD Bertrand as a Mike. And he's a good, when they go heavy as a rover, he is good. But he is also not a guy you want to play as, a rover in a way that when they're going 11 against any teams, because he will get exposed in that situation. I mean, he could play more in place of Marist, I guess. But I also think it's just like, and this is why too, it's just like one of these things that's just so stupid. Scorekeeper guy, whoever does the thing. Marist did not have 0 tackles, but then it looks like he has 0 tackles, and they're like, why was this guy even out here? It's like, well, he didn't. I mean, I was at the game. I saw he didn't. Then I watched the game. I also PFF in their stats, he didn't have 0. Like, so it's like one of these kind of things. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I think some of the per snap basis stuff, it's like, I don't think you should totally take into account anyways, because it's like, well, part of it he's rushing on this, or part of it he's dropping into coverage and they throw a deep ball or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. That isn't kind of like the best way to do it. You got to realize that when Kaiser's in, or specifically when he's in this game, they're going heavy, and which means they're usually running when they're going heavy. So it's different. So his per snap stuff is going to look different because of that.
Ray asked how many tackles he got. Jamie and PFF had him down for 3.
3,
I believe. Yeah. So, Coach Humph asked, is Jaden Mickey injured? I don't think so. I think this was simply main guys only in this game. That's what it was. And yeah, that's the deal. So, you want to take out Cam Hart? You want to take out Ben Morrison? Those are your guys against those receivers. So that's,
it's like we're taking out Harrison and Buka. So it was like, you kind of rolled with your guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. M. Reagan says, thoughts on wide receivers going forward with additional injuries to Colsey and Thomas. How much is Sam Hartman being limited by Young and wide receiver room? We've kind of talked about this. I think so. Kind of moving forward, I think this is they're going to run so much 12. They're going to be in 12 almost all of the time. Even when they go wide, I think they'll always have a tight end out there, whether it's Evans or Stays. It's probably going to be Evans because that seems to be his role, which he's done very well. So, earned it, right? They throw it to him, he catches it. That's good. I don't know. I don't know. I'm very disheartened, frankly, as you could probably tell, Jamie. I'm very disheartened by where they're at with their passing game and what they're trying to do, and the fact that they don't trust the receivers when you kind of know, like, that is an unacceptable situation to be in after 5 weeks. But I don't think there's any other way to see it. Do you disagree? I just don't.
No, I don't disagree. I think it's kind of like what we kind of thought that it could be, though, the whole time. So that's kind of just where they're at, right? And it's like all of it is just because they're playing so much catch up. It's like, someone asked me about, do you think Al Washington is doing a good job? Does Notre Dame have a D-line coaching problem? And I'm like, well, if they do, why is Howard Cross playing so well? Why did Riley Mills play a really good game against this game? Why is JJB like 2 times the player that he was at Ohio State? You know, why did Jason Onyé go from like, oh my God, is this going to be a wasted scholarship, to like a guy who got so much better in a year? Why is Gabriel Rubio improved so much? Like I think a lot of it is just like who it's like. So with Botello, it's like being like, man, Botello has to have a good year. Everyone's like, he's got to have a good year. And why is that? Because they didn't have anybody. It was like there was nobody else who even played at the position last year. Why do you think some people were like, man, I hope they get Justin Admilola back, even though Justin Admilola is like a fine player, but he's not, was never going to be an elite player, right? It's talent. It's talent in what you have. And look how young the wide receivers are, just in general, right? Like, this is how it's been for like 4 years, basically, too, at wide receiver for Notre Dame. And that's like a failure from before to now. Like, that is all of like, so it goes back to kind of like the sins of Del Alexander and all of this kind of stuff. And that's how it kind of adds up into all this, right? And it's like some of the stuff too, even if you look at your, like, everyone was like, man, Clark Lee isn't doing his job, doing a good enough job in recruiting or whatever at linebacker. And it's like, well, that's how you end up with these kind of gaps in linebacker. And that's how it all happens, right? Which is why when you always talk about, that's why recruiting is so important. Yeah. It's so important.
I mean, we should highlight on the receiver end, like in the portal era, the last 2 years, to not get a portal wide receiver. I know they had him with Caleb Smith. They end up quitting the team. Like, to me, that's a miss. It's just a miss. Like, that can't happen. In the portal era, you have to be able to bring in someone who can play for you. However, it didn't work out, I don't know. It's just, they can't be in this situation.
Yeah. It's just the problem is that, like, they're just the grad transfer, the guys, they can only get the grad transfers pretty much.
Yeah.
And they're just not those guys. There's not many, right? So, like, everyone's like, man, wouldn't it be great if they got Keon Coleman? I mean, said everybody except Florida State. Everyone would have loved to have him, but he wasn't a grad transfer. So it was like, it wasn't an option, right? So, and there was a lot of things, like the kid who went to Florida, right?
Ricky Pearsall. I was just going to say, like, man, it would be great.
Notre Dame wanted him. He wanted to go to Notre Dame. He couldn't get into Notre Dame. Like, and it sucks because he would have been great, right? But just I mean, part of it. So it is like a failure, but it's also like partly situational.
Yeah. But we have seen, on the D line, to your point, like, we have seen big improvements there from players who are new, like you said, like JJB. And so there's big improvements there. And Jamie, we wanted to make improvements to our show, right? And we needed a new intro. And so what do? We went to VSR Media, which is founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo, whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business. VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. The mythical...
Doesn't get better than that. Doesn't get better.
Yeah, man. You got to stay at mid-season form over here. Mid-season form. Spoiled by Ben Skoranek, Patrick Carter says. Words no one ever thought they would ever utter, but it's a true fact.
But it's so true. And okay, that's a perfect example, though, too, of it's totally circumstantial that happens because he's a Fort Wayne kid it wasn't like a ton of people were like, Ben Skoranek, sign me up, because he played at Northwestern. He never had a quarterback. He had like one good year. He certainly wasn't viewed as an NFL player when he was at Northwestern, and it ended up being a great take, and a really quality guy, obviously in so many ways. But it was almost like, what are the odds of, like, are they going to get another guy from Fort Wayne that played for a bad quarterback, that whatever, like, it kind of just worked out that way. And I mean, and you can say like Caleb Smith was a bad eval, and that's fair, but he wasn't horrible. Like, he wasn't like,
he will honestly, his tape at Virginia Tech is better than Skoronek's was at Northwestern.
Yeah. And
it's like truly stunning what happened.
Yeah.
It really is stunning what happened there. What I was thinking too? Like, how people ask a lot, like, if you could add a player to the offense or whatever, obviously you go back to like Michael Floyd and stuff, but like, I was thinking it would be so great if Javon McKinley was on this team. Yeah. It would be so helpful. Yeah. Like, it doesn't even have to be like Michael Floyd.
I just said on Power Hour, right? I'm like, that's the thing. It's like, I mean, Jaden Thomas is a good player, a valuable player, but he is not Javon McKinley in terms of, what he can do. And they could really use a Javon McKinley. They
really could. Yeah.
All right, Javon McKinley had a monster year with Sam Hartman. He would have. Wow. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
CHSFB 75. What happened with the lack of RPOs on Saturday? We can talk about this with play action as well. I saw them throw one RPO, Jamie.
Early in the game.
Yeah. They hit Evans on an RPO. And
I was funny. Like, well, here it comes.
On the other side of the field, too. What's funny is on the other side of the field, Tyree's got like a slant where they blitz from his spot and they don't, and he's on the hot. It's fine. He threw it to Evans and he's open. But man, if he had hit Tyree on that, again, just plenty of room. But yeah, man, I refuse. I am not talking about RPOs ever again. I don't care if they bring in, if Steve Sarkisian comes to Notre Dame, they will not run RPOs. I refuse to talk about it.
Well, here's the other thing, though, and this is why you didn't see it as much. They didn't blitz.
Yeah.
They didn't blitz a lot. So it's like, usually when you have an RPO and like they pull and throw, it's based off of blitz. Like, you see that's blitz because there's a vacated area. They didn't blitz very often. So, and when they did, they blitzed on like third down. So it was like most of the dropbacks, they just rushed forward. It's because they didn't need to. And I think that's partially why they didn't blitz, was because they didn't want to get beat with RPOs, because they knew Hartman was probably going to be good at it. And the other thing was they thought they could get pressure with forward, and they did.
I mean, they also didn't run a ton of like RPO action.
No, not a lot.
Jamie, the stuff with the play action stuff. My only guess is that Hartman just isn't comfortable. That has to, I can't think of any other reason why they don't run it.
That's probably something I didn't think of, but I think that you might have something there, because that is one thing when we talk about like the transition.
Yeah.
From like slow mesh to like you are doing like straight drop back stuff, or you are under center, that footwork and all that kind of stuff is very different. It's very different, right? And okay, so like here's an example, right? Like, I'm just looking at his numbers right now. Hartman, 14 of 25, 56% on play action.
Yeah.
Which isn't great. At 9.7 yards per attempt. Obviously but a lot of that was the hold and stays.
Yeah, it's all that stuff against.
So that's basically all that stuff, right? So that's I think you're right. That's probably got a lot to do with it. Like, in terms of just timing wise, a lot of that stuff's different, and they probably rep it. It's not good. So Yeah, and that's also too why like people on face value you're like, why aren't they running play action? Like what the
Yeah.
hell? That might be why. I think
Yeah.
that's a good
I mean,
call.
the throw to Tobias against Navy, it's a play action and he's open and it's late and it's short. It just,
Yeah.
it's not a good rep, and people are yelling at me because, oh, he was 19 to 23 or whatever he was. It's like, yeah, but that was bad. And here we are against Ohio State and they're not running it because it was bad.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
The Rajon says that's a weird issue to have. And Troy McIntyre, how can you want to be a program and not be comfortable with play action? He played 5 years without
But that's
running
why,
it like that.
but
That's why.
just because he wants it doesn't mean he's good at it.
And it takes it
Like,
also takes time. And that's one of the things too, right? When they were talking about like, oh, he's grown so much from his footwork and all this kind of stuff. Like that's part of it. Like he just might not be all the way there yet. And maybe he won't ever get there this year with it. But that's could be something for sure.
remember Jack Cohn had the opposite problem. They couldn't get him comfortable in shotgun.
Yeah.
It was the opposite. He was used to being under center and all that footwork, and they got him in shotgun. He didn't have to do all that, and he wasn't comfortable. It took him half the year.
Yeah.
It's just we've seen it, and Jack Cohn's a good quarterback. So
Yeah,
we've seen that stuff. Duck 1943 after Golden calling such a good defensive game. What is the probability that Freeman called the 3rd and 19 play? I would say it's non-zero, but it's very close to zero.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have had input. Like he found out like what the call was going to be. Also, it's like if Golden says, "Hey, we're running, we're dropping, we're going to run cover 4 here, whatever, right? Quarters." Like he's just going to go with it because Golden called the good game, right? I don't think I think there's far less of a chance that he was like Golden came up and he's like, "Let's bring the house." And then he's like, "No, let's play cover." I don't think that because there's a podcast. Sorry, this is like a weird transition, but there was a podcast that it was the Make Defense Great Again podcast that Marcus Stream was on when he first got the job at Notre Dame. And Coach Vass is a guy that I think if you follow on Twitter, he's a guy who's he's a high school defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Posts a ton of clips and stuff. Go check him out if you haven't checked him out before. Or like, man, I haven't seen him in a while, so I hope he's still doing stuff, but I don't know. But he used to have this podcast, and it's Make Defense Great Again, and he would have different coaches on there talking about different things and their philosophies, their defense. And at the time, he was talking with Marcus Freeman. He was talking about dollar and all this kind of stuff. And he talked about it's like third and long, midfield, ball at this. What's your call? And Freeman was like, I'm bringing pressure because that's who I am. So I would say Freeman probably would have been like, if it was his call, he probably would have said, let's bring pressure. Then again, it's 3rd and 19. So it changes the whole dynamic of it because it's not 3rd and 8, right? So I don't know. I mean, he definitely has input into it, but it's like, I'm going to guess he would go with whatever Golden said. And Notre Dame didn't blitz very much in this game either.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Nyber. What impact does this loss have on our recruiting as opposed to having simply closed out OSU and won just this close? I would think none. I mean, not in a negative way. Yeah. I think here's the thing. Honestly, if the players are at the game and they're there and they think this is awesome, I love this, this makes me happy, like being in this environment is great. As long as you get that feeling from them, it doesn't really matter how the game turned out. It's like, oh, they ran it in on the, like they literally landed on the goal line. I'm not going to go to Notre Dame then. Like there's no way. All you need is that feeling. That's all you need, because they don't have the same view as fans do. They're just like, they want the show. They want the experience. As long as the experience is fine. it's good. And you have to remember, like, Jeremiah Love went to the Stanford and Marshall games last year. Manti famously went to, what was it, UConn?
Yeah.
Syracuse? Something like some.
It might have been Syracuse.
The worst game you could ever imagine. Like it just as long as you
Syracuse,
have the feeling and the emotion and the fun of it, it's all good.
Sorry, Siri. Siri got triggered there.
Siri needs to settle down.
Or Siri here. I think Siri thought Syracuse was Siri.
Oh, got it. All right, Celezo. Who is this? Celezo VLK. Does this team have the leadership a la 2017 post Georgia Drew Tranquil, publicly telling the rest of the schedule Notre Dame is going to punish them? What do you think?
I mean, I think they have plenty of leadership on the team. Most of the guys, like I said, that are key pieces on the team were there when they went through all of their, downs last year. So it's not like these guys don't know how to bounce back. So I think they have plenty of leadership on the team. So I'm not worried about that part of it.
Neither am I. And I think they're good. That heartens me more than anyone like being like speechy guy. Like the most important thing about that 2017 team is that they were good. And that's why they played better. So I think this team is also good. Tolliver 0917, given our success running the ball, you could tell they were starting to wear down the front. Why so little play action? Kind of talked about this earlier. Like great length. Did you have anything else, or do you want to just move on to the next one?
Yeah, we can just move on. We kind of went over it. So.
Yep, we went over that. Okay. Last question, Sloth. Last week, Parker was asked about the wide receiver room having the number 2 route efficiency in the country. I wasn't familiar, so I Googled, and I think that means yards per route, rather than the more typical yards per catch to measure effectiveness of a route runner. Is that correct? If so, this stat makes sense for individual evaluation, but does it make sense for the whole wide receiver room? Teams that run 4 to 5 wide all the time are just going to have way more wide receiver routes run that end in 0 yards compared to a team that passes out of 2 wide receiver sets more. So could Notre Dame having a number 2 wide receiver route efficiency be in large part due to running 2 back and 2 tight end sets regularly?
I never thought of it in that way too, about that part about, running more like less 11 or whatever, right, than a lot of teams.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, because that's, if you look at, and that's why, like, I think I don't know how many, like Chris Tyree's up there with yards per route run, right? Like, because of his production during,
and he's not in a ton of snaps.
Yeah. So, that, boost stuff and all that kind of stuff. And also I think, weirdly, because Notre Dame has played a lot of games where they haven't got a ton of snaps, right, on offense. So that affects it too. They don't have an offense that they're not playing like tempo, trying to run 80 plays a game, right? So that has effect on it too. I think overall, like, the wide receivers have played fine. They've played good. They've done good with what they've had. But I also think that there are limitations in terms of, like, who is in the wide receiver room. And, like, I think, Tobias Werner, this is a perfect chance to break out and do this too. But it's like, this isn't 3rd or 4th year Tobias Merriweather. You know what I mean? Like, it's 2nd year Tobias Merriweather, right? Like, it's really 2nd year Jaden Thomas. Like, every guy on the team, because it's, if you conclude like Tyree being at 1st year being receiver, all of the key receivers are guys in their 1st or 2nd year of playing college football, right? Because the guys that were supposed to be like Lawrence Styles, if his career trajectory went in a certain direction, then this would have been his year, where it was like, well, now he's the lead dog. And it's like, but that didn't happen like that, right? Because it didn't have that progression. And that's just kind of where it's at. It's a pretty young wide receiver group.
Yeah. I don't know about this stat. Like, frankly, I understand what Parker's saying. Like, he's saying that that they're doing a good job, route run or whatever. It's just kind of a stat that could mean anything. To me, they don't even honestly, like, they don't even really like find ways. I mean, they do more to like Jaden Thomas. They try to get him the ball. They just don't seem to find ways to get Tyree and Tobias the ball on a regular basis, other than 1 or 2 times a game. And it's apparent. It's apparent to me. And I just think now you're in a situation you're going to have to rely on them. And it would have been better if you'd have been doing that the whole time, in my opinion. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, like I said, they're going to be forced. I do want to get back to Patrick. Let's talk about this question with Patrick Carter, because it was his question about the Drew Tranquil thing. This is my take on the 2017 thing that Drew Tranquil said, and when I wasn't trying. I don't want it to sound just when I said they were a good team. I like when Drew Tranquil said that, teams are in trouble. Like if a player had said to me, oh, teams are in trouble now, like we're mad about the way that this game happened and whatnot. Like that stuff always kind of bothers me. Like, don't be mad or whatever. Like you just had the opportunity to go win. Like it's not about who cares. And the other part is like, then you went and got boat raced by Miami later. Like those speeches to me don't really do anything. And I don't think that team and their success had really anything to do with what he said on the field afterwards. Like I said, they were a good football team. And they had a very explosive offense and a very explosive running game. And they had a good defense, to me, that wasn't the leadership per se. It was just they were good. And so they ended up playing good football. And so that's how I feel about this team. So that's what I mean. To me, it's not about the leadership of him saying that. It's just they have a good football team and they had good leaders. I'm not saying they didn't, but to me, it's just like you don't need to say that sort of thing for the leadership to manifest itself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like it's like how Tim Tebow with his we won't lose a single game the rest of the year. Well, your team is loaded with first round picks, buddy. Like you're going to be favored in every game. Like, yes, it sounds great. What a leader. What a leader. Well, the guy's like, I'm sorry. Like the guy's awesome. And everybody else on the team is awesome. Like, yes, I whatever. And if that works for people and that hits home with people, great. Right. But I am also too, like, not one of these, like, I've always been, if you need a speech from a leader on the team to get you back into it, then it's like, I mean, you probably need a lot more than a speech. You know what I mean? Or you need a speech to get ready to play Ohio State or whatever, right? Just pick a scenario. That's not a good sign. Like, though, to me, Drew Tranquil, for him as a leader, and it's not that he wasn't vocal and he couldn't like command a room or anything like that, but Drew Tranquil was a great leader for Notre Dame because of what he did and how he worked every day. The guy was like an insane work ethic.
I mean, playing through that ankle in 2018, which was just a complete, like, terrible injury.
And showing up in big games and doing it, like, that's why people have respect for you and do that. And that's the main thing. And that's, so it probably meant more because it came from him and they know that, but it's just like you said, it's one of those things to just say at the time. And I think it's also because that 2017 team, they were coming off of that 2016 season where, I mean, things went down the toilet, right? So it's a different time. Yeah.
And I think there was a certain amount of like they proved something in that game because the season before was so poor. And I don't think Notre Dame feels like they had any, like, I think they felt like they should have won the game and they deserved to win. They were a better team. And I think they were, and they let it slip away. So that's unfortunate. All right, Jamie, I think that'll do it for today. Bunch of good questions. And I'm glad we got to talk it out. I'm glad we got to talk about it. I feel a lot better. Ready to move on. R. Zalamia says, thanks for the amazing series of therapy sessions, gents. ISD is the best. Thank you for being here. Obviously it's, I think a lot of people, so many people hit me up like, hey, Greg, I love your shows, the post game and all that stuff. I downloaded, but did not listen. I can't listen to stuff about the game. I think people were legit traumatized by it. So hopefully everyone's feeling better now. I totally
wants to relive it. Yeah,
I totally understand. So, but thank you all for being here and thank you for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the show. That's great. We really appreciate that. Subscribe to the podcast as well. Links are in the description below for that. Put in a rating, 5-star review rating. That would be great. Patrick Carter, any shout out for Kyle Hamilton notching 3 sacks on Sunday? Just an absolute beast. What a player. What a player, Jamie. Look, it turns out he can do everything.
Turns out he can play.
Turns out he's good, but I don't know about that 40 time though. Maybe we'll drop him a few more slots in the draft. So, all right, we'll be back on Thursday previewing Duke, and we're going to be getting deep into that game as well. Have a good rest of the week, everyone, and we'll talk to you on Thursday. Keep hitting and hustling.